Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this final keynote session of the day, where we're going to be talking about how to make the most of your local tech ecosystem. So, of course, we're incredibly proud of some of the work we've been doing in Birmingham and the West Midlands around the local tech ecosystem. Over the last kind of 2 to 3 years, both myself and Jay, who's the moderator today, have seen some real change that is putting us in a good position and setting the right foundation. But of course, we can always do more. So today we're going to hear from Perdie and Margaret from the newly formed Spice Startups. And they're going to be talking about how to do more, and there they are, giving us a nice wave there. So yeah, we've got Perdie ALDER, who's the CEO, and we've also got Margaret Anne who's the COO. So welcome both. We're going to do formal introductions in just a moment. As I said, Jay Ashcroft, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Birmingham Tech Week and has curated this fantastic week of events, is going to kind of host and moderate this session. I'm going to hand over to Jay in just a moment. However, before I do, as always, just going to give a big shout out to our key partners. So we've got Tech Nation, West Midlands Growth Company, and the Department for International Trade. And so all of those partners are running the week in association with us. So really proud to have them, and also great work they're doing across the West Midlands, also the entire UK, and really promoting what's going on in this region internationally as well. And of course, the week wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, NatWest being our lead sponsor this year. Big thank you to everyone there, and also Copper, Culture Group, BJSS, Side Trade, and BMET. And then, of course, all our partners who have come together to help make this week possible. A lot of them are putting content on during the week, and a lot of them have supported us through lots of different engagements and communication along the way as well. So, Jay, I'm going to hand over to you now, so you can kind of formally introduce both Perdie and Margaret.
Thanks, Yanis. Happy for everyone to be here and joining us. So I'll hand straight over, because I know we're running a few minutes behind than our schedule. So I'll hand straight over to Perdie and Margaret, who are joining us from London today. Over to you both, if you want to do your intros.
All right, Perdie, take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Perdie. So yeah, as Jay and Yanis mentioned, I'm co-founder and CEO of Spice Startups. My background is in ecosystem engagement, so I ran programs for different universities, different businesses in London, helping them to engage with startups and technology businesses in the community. I'll pass you over to Margaret.
Hello, I'm Margaret Anne. I'm COO here at Spice Startups. Prior to this, Perdie and I were working together in the ecosystem, helping startups at bigger and scale. My background is in computer science and entrepreneurship, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with everybody today. Quick note, because we can't see everybody's beautiful face in person, please be really interactive on chat. I know we have Q&A at the end of the event, but if you have any questions that you want to ask while we're presenting, we are more than happy to answer that.
Fantastic.
We're going to share on screen.
Yeah, so Yanis, if we can hand over presenter rights to Margaret.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just confirm that you can see our screen, okay?
Yeah, we've got, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I just accidentally showed the end script, the end slide instead. So. Sorry, bear with us just one moment.
So we already did the official intro, so we're just going to get right into what we're actually going to be talking about today, which is all about mapping out your ecosystem. So if you're in the Birmingham tech ecosystem, there's going to be a lot of information that's available to you. And every founder is going through this same journey, and you're not walking alone on the journey. So as with any journey, as with any situation that you're going through, there is a map. And like with Google Maps or with Apple Maps or any other map that you choose to use, A map is there to give you all of the information that you can possibly have, and then you need to navigate your way through that. So you create your own journey using all the information that you've got. And luckily with ecosystems, there are a lot of people that have taken those journeys before. So local guides, local knowledge who can help you figure out the shortcuts, any roadblocks that might be on your way, and just make sure that you navigate away from wrong turns and take the best journey through the ecosystem as possible. So what we're going to do for the next hour or so is talk to you a bit more about the Birmingham tech ecosystem, how to map out the ecosystem, what you might find interesting, some practical tips for how to get in the door, how to meet mentors, how to connect with investors and other folks in the ecosystem as well, and give you as much information as we can possibly give you about what that might actually look like.
But before that, we're going to start off by sharing a little bit about what we do at Spice and why we're giving this talk today. So we started a company about 2 months ago, and it's really kind of a creation of our greatest passion, which is helping startups, specifically tech startups. That's what we were doing here in London before. So our company is kind of I guess a newborn child of our two loves. So the main thing that we currently do is we engage with customers or our clients who service early stage tech startups, and what we do is create custom-made accelerators. We call it accelerators as a service. I'll let you work out the acronym for yourself. But what we do is help them engage with their startups and help change the perception of them in those startups' eyes from, you know, just a provider of X, Y, and Z B2B SaaS tool to really being viewed as the kind of go-to resource for all of the different startups' questions. So we kind of do that by leveraging relationships. So we make sure we're really engaged with all of the different startups in the ecosystem. Then who are the people, you know, writing the checks and funding those startups, and then the key influencers and the key voices in the ecosystem that can help the startups as well. So we look at that relationship part as kind of a nice little triad that we like to be dead center in the middle of. And then through that, we use those relationships and kind of our own personal, you know, knowledge and expertise to position our clients as the go-to experts in their given field. And so it builds not only their profile in the ecosystem, but it helps them engage with their customers more. It builds brand awareness, credibility, and it gives their clients, the tech startups, you know, a reason to share more about them and to be more engaged with the company. Okay, so how do we do it? And this overlaps with what we're going to be doing today, is that we really like to, you know, talk with our clients and understand who exactly do they serve, who are the tech startups or who are the startups in general that they're trying to engage more with. So we understand what stage the company's at, what size, what are the startups' greatest challenges, and then from there, we create kind of a unique map of how we see I guess the resources that we can provide to help those startups as they scale. And then we kind of create a custom-made program for those startups that is run by the company. And then yeah, we fire away and we host as many events as possible to help provide more value to the startups.
So diving right into kind of ecosystem. So for those of you that have done any kind of research on ecosystems before, there are a ton of ecosystem maps out there. So every startup ecosystem in the world, they all try and map it out, and it's actually really complicated because there's a lot of people involved in every ecosystem, and we'll go over who the key players are later. But then you've also got different stages in your ecosystem as well. So how do the startups benefit? How do scale-ups benefit? How do larger corporates benefit? And then how does it like all work together? So people try and display this information in different ways by putting it on different graphics. So some people will make them look more pretty than other people. Some people will have a whole bunch of stuff going on and how they all kind of like slide into each other. But generally, the aim is just to give you all of the information in one place. And I think sometimes that can be overwhelming, like this here. How does that actually help a startup?
I can't even read anything.
You can't even read it. And it's just a bit like, it's a lot of information, just like with Google Maps. It's like, here's everything that you could possibly need to know. And then some of them, this is actually a Birmingham tech white paper, it's almost like not enough information. So there's the headline information, like here are some of the people that are involved, but actually there's no specifics there. There's no like names, there's no why it's relevant for you, there's no whether it's relevant for you. So the bit that we want to cover today is making your own map. So forget all of these long, complicated maps that other people have created. They're doing it to try and help you, but you want to figure out your own path. So say, for example, me and Margaret Anne are traveling from London to Birmingham. We might not take exactly the same route, even though we're going from one place to the same place. We're going to have different stops on our route, depending on what's important to us. So it might be that one of us wants to stop off and get food, or visit a friend on the way, or get some fuel. That will dictate the journey that we take on the map that we've both been given, which is exactly the same. So what we want to help you do is map out what part of my journey is interesting. Where do I want to navigate to? What are my points of interest? How can I find my way on this journey that's for me and that's right for me? So some questions that you might be asking when you're working out your own route through the ecosystem is, where would I work from? So I'm going to go to a co-working space, which one, why, etc. We're going to run through all of these in more detail. Where can I get advice and mentoring? Who's available for this kind of stuff? Who are my role models? Where can I meet like-minded people? Like if you want fundraising, massive part of any ecosystem, what are your options? Where are they? How are they going to be able to help you? Where can you meet customers? Are your customers local? How do you get your foot in the door? How do you find the talent that you need to grow your team? Are there any diversity networks that are out there that can support you? Is there any other support that is around that's going to be available to you as a startup founder? So what we've done is we're going to help you, give you the tools that you need to start getting some of these answers for yourself, and then also identify some of the people within the Birmingham region who are going to be useful to you based on us doing the exercise on your behalf.
And just really quickly before we jump in, everything that we're saying has either been something that we personally have used or we have seen or helped another founder use. I moved to the UK about 3.5 years ago, and I knew absolutely no one. And so a lot of these are tools that I've personally used, or Perdie has. So everything has been tried and tested. So we'll just jump straight into things. Co-working spaces. You have your idea, you have your startup. Now where are you going to work? Right now, you're probably working from home, but hopefully things improve quite quickly and you're able to join a co-working space or have a more permanent place for your office. You're probably sick of working from home, like the two of us are. So what should you do when you're trying to find a place? You know, co-working spaces, from our eyes, really fall into two different categories. They're either kind of a property holding company and they're trying to disguise themselves as a co-working space and care a lot about startups, but at the end of the day, they're a property holding company, or they're a really community-based co-working space. So you want to go for the latter, and the way that you can tell who those places are number one, do they have like a specific sector that they service? You know, we've seen co-working spaces for health tech places, fintech. You know, there's a lot of like niche, smaller co-working spaces, which is great because then you're surrounded by people who all have your similar domain expertise. Or there's more ones that are more kind of like general community based. So these might just be a place for tech startups in general, or startups in general. That's particularly exciting because you can engage with people who are outside of your domain. So, you know, it's just, it will broaden, I think, the people that you get to meet on a day-to-day basis. It's also really unique, I think, when you can work in a place where people are at similar stages at you, or just a little bit beyond the similar stage, because, you know, being a founder at the end of the day is pretty lonely. I mean, all I talk to every single day is my co-founder, no one else. So it's really, so if you can be in a co-working space and you get to meet, you know, 4 or 5 other people daily, and then you can attend the larger community events that they will hopefully host too, you can be engaging with 80, 90 other founders, which, you know, you have no idea what sort of doors that can open for you. And you get to speak to those people who have just been in your shoes so they can give you really fantastic advice. A lot of these places that are more community focused will create kind of these custom programs that we were talking about earlier for their startups. You know, they're there in the first place to service the startup, so it's in their best interest to help you. So look for a co-working space that genuinely wants to help you, and those are some of the ways that you can figure that out. We've done a little bit of research in the Birmingham sector, and we found Innovation Birmingham looks pretty good, and as well as Impact Hub. Innovation Birmingham has a really good virtual membership as well that you should take advantage of. And yeah, so I would definitely check those out once COVID restrictions ease up a little bit, or now, because you just never know who you're going to meet and who's going to be that lead domino to help you move.
Just FYI, all these opinions that we're expressing are opinions of myself and Margaret Anne and Spice, based off the research that we've done. So absolutely do the research yourselves as well, and find anyone who you think is more relevant to you.
Yeah. Okay, so you have your co-working space, or you know where you're working out of, you have your company. What next? Well, there's going to be a lot of questions that you need answered as a startup founder that you don't know how to solve yourself. So what do? If you're a startup and you don't have a lot of money to pay the experts, or you want to maintain cash flow and you don't want to have a lot of extra expenses, there's a lot of people out there who have been in your shoes before who can help you. So we've put together a little bit of framework for you to figure out who are those best people to talk to. One of the most important things on this is you need to sit down and map this out 12, 16, I don't know where those numbers came from, 6, 12, and 18 months, 12 to 16 also works, but far in advance before you're actually going to need that person's help. The last thing you want to do is make a random cold email to someone when you need free advice at the moment that you need it, because it's super transactional and obvious. Versus if you start those relationships early, you can build up trust with that person, you can show that you take their advice, they'll buy into your story more, and maybe there's a way that you can help them too. They'll have more vested interest in what you're doing the longer you maintain that relationship. So a few things that you should do to help figure out who you should reach out to. Who's been in your shoes before? Who was where you are 12 months ago? Who knows what you don't? Who do you want to work with? Mention that one. Who are other founders at your current stage on a similar growth trajectory? And who is someone you may want to work with in the future? That last one is super important, because if you think you might want to bring this person on as a CTO or as an early employee, you want to know that person. You want to know how that person reacts to stress, what their work ethic is like. And that's something that is a lot, you can get more data points the longer you know that person. So it's great to engage early. Okay, so you've identified people that you want to reach out to. Well, how are you going to reach out to them? This is a cold email template, which I stole from Tim Ferriss a couple years ago. I have used this and it really, really works. Like almost an alarmingly high rate of responses for this email template. And so we will actually, Perdie, do you want to pop in the chat? We have a link to a form that you can fill out. We're doing a little Slack channel for Spice Startups, and if you want to join, you can fill out the quick form. It takes like 3 seconds, and we'll send you the link to all of this, so you can just copy and paste this template. So a few things you want to do to optimize open rate, response rate. So be really specific. Have a very, very clear ask. Don't just ask for like a 15, 20-minute phone call or conversation. You need to have something like, oh, I read your article on this and I have a follow-up question. You want to keep it short. It should be, you don't want the person to have to scroll. They're just automatically not going to read the email. Keep it tight. Balance, you want to give context, but not too much context. Introduce yourself so they understand, who you are, but whatever context you think you need to give, you probably need to give half of what you actually think you need to give. So shrink it down, follow up, don't take it personally if they don't respond the first time. I would probably cut it after 4 times. I mean, I'm crazy, so I will email a person a lot and follow up a lot, but you have to cut it at some point. And personalize, make sure like having the opening line having to do with something that is super, super relevant that they just did. Like it's worth spending 10, 15 minutes to go through their Twitter, read a book, read an article, listen to an interview that they did, and reference that, and so you can show that it's very genuine.
Another thing that we wanted to say on cold outreach, because people think that it doesn't necessarily always work, or it's a waste of time, or there's more effective methods. But in our previous role, one of our remits was to get high-profile speakers to come along and give a talk to like 100 people, 100 early stage tech companies. And we had speakers like the co-founder of Slack, managing partner Andreessen Horowitz. Who else did we have that was high profile? Dame Stephanie Shai. We had the CMO of Revolut. We have something
number 26.
N26. Like we have a lot of people, and all of them came from sending them a tweet or a LinkedIn message.
Yeah.
Like completely cold. So I sent Cal Henderson, co-founder and CTO of Slack, a tweet saying, hey, I noticed that you're in London for another event. Can you speak with our community? Because you've only got like 360 characters or something. You have to be really specific. And all of these people that we've spoken to they say that they do want to help, but they don't have any time. So the more specific you are, the more they know what the ask is, the more they can work out whether they can do it or whether they can't do it. So yeah, do not be afraid. Like the LinkedIn connect with people, you've got 300 characters where you can add a note to the connection. Just try it, like, and personalize it. Obviously, you don't say like hi, blah 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 blah.
Yeah. I can add personal experience on this. So that I did exactly this, what you are both saying. Yeah, so I worked in London startups for sort of 4 or 5 years and was commuting from Birmingham. Got tired of the commute sort of last Christmas, and then decided I wanted to network through Birmingham, and just went and emailed and met a lot of people for coffees when that was all okay in the world. But I had a really specific ask about, well, how do I get involved and help the Birmingham tech ecosystem grow? Within 6 months, I'd met Yanis, and then I was helping him out here at Birmingham Tech. So it's brilliant advice. Yeah, and for anyone listening and watching, definitely try it out. It works.
It absolutely does work.
I've used Instagram too, and I have DM'd someone and followed up 32 times, and it did eventually get them to do an interview with me. So you just never know what channel is going to work, and it's always worth it.
So talking about like-minded people, so one of the things about COVID, I guess, is that you're not necessarily going to go down to a co-working space and be able to connect with like-minded people as easily. But also, if you don't want to join a space, you don't have the money at the moment, or you just don't think it's relevant, you're happy working from home, there's loads of ways that you can connect with other like-minded people. So again, like Margaret Anne mentioned at the beginning, this is just us using the tools that we always use to kind of map out ecosystems. So Silicon Canal comes up really high at the top of Google if you're just searching for Birmingham tech community. But the things that we mostly use are Meetup. So if you just go on to Meetup, the website, and type in like tech founders Birmingham, tech Birmingham, startups Birmingham, it comes up with a ton of different groups. So we found Entrepreneurs Meetup group, a Women in Tech Meetup group, the Tech Wednesdays Meetup group, No Code Founders Meetup, and there's loads of more specific tech ones as well if you're very techie. And so it's worth just checking them out. Some of them are just communities, and they've got a couple of hundred people in, and you can kind of chat to them. Some of them run events alongside it. Another one that we use quite a lot is Facebook, which actually there's a ton of Facebook communities. So we tap into the London Startups Facebook group quite a lot. It's quite engaged. It's a great place to get a bit of feedback. I checked on Facebook again. Birmingham Startups, Innovation Birmingham Campus looks like they have a Facebook group which is open access, so you don't need to be part of their community in order to be able to post on it, get a bit of feedback, that kind of thing. So it's just a case of digging, but all of these things are free, and just free access to people that might be useful to you. You can connect with them, have a Zoom call, get a coffee once you're allowed to go outside. Events obviously is another great thing. Everybody here is at an event for Birmingham Tech Week, so you get the value of events connecting people, but there's loads of awesome events going on all the time. Silicon Canal runs some. You can also just go onto Eventbrite and search for events. There were quite a lot that came up, again, when I typed in kind of Birmingham Tech, Birmingham Startup, that kind of thing. One thing that we would say is if you're a sole founder and you're like a bit introverted and you don't love the idea of going to an event on your own, go to a demo day or something like that. You sit there for an hour. You don't have to talk to anyone for that hour because there's content being pushed out to you, which is not only great because you can learn how people are pitching, demoing their own products, and you can learn from it. When you get to the half-an-hour networking afterwards, it's full of like-minded people that are in exactly the same boat as you. You might be wanting to pitch in a couple of months' time or just interested in what's going on, but you've got a conversation starter straight away. Like, you can ask them which was their favourite demo. Yeah. You can go chat to one of the demoers if it's relevant. And there's always a team around that will help connect you. So we'd recommend that as just an easy access event. We were running them virtually as well. And the third thing is Slack groups and that kind of stuff. So if you've got questions, you just want to get connections, you want to get a bit of product feedback, you want to validate one of your ideas, you know, you've got people there that are in the same boat as you, and they will give a little bit of time to help you answer some questions, validate your product, which logo do you like out of these for, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So again, we posted the invitation to join a Slack group that we are running for founders nationally, so it's not just localized, which will just connect people, just use each other as a resource.
Yeah, chat, show what's up. Oh, a quick little note on, I'll go back a slide, on Slack. Perdie and I both met on a Slack channel randomly, so we're a little biased. We highly support using it. And one quick note on talking to people at events. Obviously, this can be a little nerve-wracking during the networking portion. What I always tell people is you don't have to ask a question that you're like not genuinely interested in the answer is. So if you don't want to ask someone how their day is, you don't have to ask them that. You know, you can ask them, why do you do what you do? Or something that you're genuinely interested in the answer of. And I think it's a lot more comfortable that way, and the people can tell you're interested in chatting. So move on. Okay, finance. Really big topic that we talk to a lot of founders about. This is an area that Perdie and I are particularly passionate about, so we've put together a lot of different resources that you can use when you are mapping out how to best get funding. You know, a lot of people think that you know, they have to be in London to access the funding, most of the funding in Europe. And while it's true that most of the funding in Europe does take place in London, you most certainly do not have to be there. We have done a lot of events with investors over the past like 6 months since COVID, and everybody says that while they're based in London, they're really happy to look elsewhere outside of here. And I think being in Birmingham is actually fantastic because you can access London, you know, once it's safe, you can go meet the investor in person, which is always fantastic. And of course, it's always optimal if you sell yourself in person. But from the investor's perspective, when you're in a place that is cheaper to live and cheaper to scale a company than London, they know that their venture capital dollar is going to go a lot further there. So I think it's actually a huge selling point for being outside. So a couple of different methods of funding that we'll go into. Number one, crowdfunding. You know, there's sites like Seedrs and Crowdcube that they just merged, but that you can go and you know, you can put your product directly in the hands or the eyes of your customer. A few tricks that we have seen, or a few insider tips that we've seen that might be relevant for your crowdfunding, is that some of the companies, so depending on the site you go, you won't be able to access any of the dollars that you raise on the platform unless you hit that target metric. And so from the back end of certain crowdfunding platforms, they won't even list your company or your raise unless they know that you maybe already have, let's say, 40% of the round closed before it goes live. So if you're planning on using crowdfunding, it's worth figuring out who are those kind of you know, angel investors or people in your network or VCs who are going to help you get that first little amount that you need to go live on the website. Number two, angel investment.
And don't forget that with crowdfunding, everyone goes on your cap table.
Yes.
So if you've got a bunch of investors through crowdfunding, you just have to keep that in mind for if you want to raise VC money in the future or something like that.
It can be really fantastic though, if you want to do like a small amount of crowdfunding just to get enough money to be able to prove more traction to go on and close a larger round for VCs. That's a really great opportunity. Second thing we'll touch on, angel investment. So, you know, these are individuals, high net worth individuals who are providing a chunk of change for it to be probably your first check in the company. So it can be a little difficult to track down angel investors. Actually, I think our next slide is on this. I'll touch on this in a second. But when you're trying to choose your angel investor, you want to look at a few different things. Number one, you want someone who's going to be more than just the check, because it is that first amount of capital that you're getting. They also need to help you open a few other doors as well. So if you're looking for someone, maybe you're doing a fintech company, it can be worth looking at individuals who are high up at certain banks who have the financial means and the expertise to kind of buy into your idea a little bit and to help get you introductions to other people. Tip number two, you need to be EIS or SEIS registered if your company can. That's a whole different topic that they might have other events at Birmingham Tech Week about, or you can always just do a quick Google search as well. But you do want to be registered or about to register to make the funding process as seamless as possible. It's a massive tax advantage, and it really caps the downsides for angel investors. So check that out. Tip number three, do your due diligence. So this is kind of the tricky part on angel investors, is that you might meet an individual who at, I don't know, a party or a restaurant even, who says that they're willing to put 200K into your company. Okay, well that's great, but how do you know who that person is? Because that person's name is now attached to your company. So if they are not a trustworthy person with a good reputation, it can actually do more harm than good. So what you can ask is if they have other people that they've invested in before, you can talk to their founders. Two downsides to that, maybe this is their first check they're writing, so they're not going to have that sort of proof of their portfolio before, or you know, the founder that they invested in might not want to be totally honest with you either. But that's just kind of something to keep in mind. And if you do feel like you're getting red flags in the back of your mind when you're meeting an angel, don't ignore that.
Another tip is if they give you a T's and C's, just ask your community like-minded founder network. Just read over the T's and C's. Anyone that's got any investment before will say that looks like a red flag. It might be about how much equity they keep. It might be other numbers, but you just want to run it past other people because yeah, it's not a regulated industry. It's not like VC. It's much more difficult to do due diligence, and obviously it's really attractive when someone says that they want to give you the money. It's so easy to just be like, yeah, I'll take it. But you want to make sure that you're really meeting with a trustworthy person.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And if you do, like, that's when it really is worth spending money on to have a lawyer review the contract, because the last thing you want to do is find out that they have any sort of like weird liquidation preferences, or you know, as you're growing, they get preferential stock, whatever. There's a lot in there, but just be a little careful there. Okay, third point for finance, venture capital. Probably everybody here is very, very familiar with, you know, VC can do for their company. So a little interesting statistic. On average, you need to chat to 80 different VCs before you get the money. 80 is a lot of people, probably more people than you've talked to in like all of 2020. So budget that into your time frame of when you are planning your fundraising process. You're going to need to speak to a lot of people. This is where Perdie and I do some events like speed networking and speed dating with angel investors. So that's another reason to tune into our Slack channel, because we might be posting about that. But it's a really great way for you to get face time and relationship building time with a lot of different VCs, which you're going to need. Tip number one, before you do that, make sure you investigate a little bit about their portfolio before, because if they've already invested in your competitor, or they have some sort of conflict of interest, there's no chance you're going to get investment from them. So you need to you know, cut it off there before you waste time trying to convince them to invest in your company when it's just not an option. Number two, ask them for informal advice. So from Perdie and I's experience, we've worked with a lot of VCs in London and all of Europe, and pretty much all of them see this as a very valuable part to understand who to invest into and who not to. So they see their time that they spend giving informal advice to startups as extremely fantastic indicators on who to invest in. So you can attend events, like some VCs do open office hours, or we host events like that too, where you can start to speak with a VC before you're starting that fundraising round, and then listen to them. If they have any advice, take their advice and then follow up with them in 4 to 6 weeks after you've implemented it. Said, hey, remember when you told me X, Y, and Z? I did it, and here are the results. Even if the results are not exactly what you're hoping for, it will show that you have the ability to follow through with what you say, and that you take their advice, and that you're also very serious. So one quick thing that you can do after the follow-ups, apart from that, is you're likely sending company updates to either your advisors or your early stage investors. Add those VCs to the list, and you can ask the VC, hey, do you want to hear from the monthly update every 4 to 6 weeks on our progress? And that way the VC, you'll stick in the back of their mind, and they'll also see, wow, this person really has followed up with me every single month for 8 months. Well, when you go to close your next round or start fundraising for your next round, you have something really great to build off of. Tip number 3, okay, this is very important. It's a two-way street. People think that when they are fundraising, that they have to go around and be the one like begging for money, and that they need to be the one selling themselves. While that is partially true, it's also true the other way. Now that there are so many VC firms, they also need to sell you and as why they are venture capitalists that is best for your money, because the way you should look at your company is, my company is going to be really valuable. I believe in it. I've worked my ass off for this. And so I want to make sure that the people I'm letting at the cap table are the best people who can help me move from here to here. So ask what additional support that they can provide for your company. They're likely to be taking a board seat. So you want to make sure that they're super, super value add just beyond that check size. Tip number 4, think carefully about equity and have growth in the back of your mind. Some VCs say they never want to hear founders already thinking about the exit, and some say you need to have an exit in mind. So you're going to get both sides of the table with this.
Their agenda, remember, is that they exit. They want the money back, so they want to get you to the next fundraise as quickly as possible, and they want you to scale super quick, because that's how they make money. So they're going to try and convince you to go on that journey with them, and you need to convince them to go on your journey with you. So just be really careful.
One other quick note on that is about 80% of every venture capital dollar goes straight into like Facebook, Google, and I think one other company in terms of ads. So if you don't want to grow that way and you want to grow by throwing more money into product development, make sure that you have a DC who also feels that way, and you have a really honest conversation about that. Okay, venture debt. VC is less known friend. Venture debt. This is an opportunity for startups. Actually, honestly, it's basically just a loan, and then if you don't pay the loan off, it will convert into equity. Some people will like to do this because you don't have to give up equity up front. So if you think that you only need a bit of money to hit mass scale, it can be a really great option for you. Do remember that when you're fundraising right now, it's kind of seen as like a, you can brag about it if you just close a massive round. It will get you maybe an article in TechCrunch. It's good for your LinkedIn. But at the end of the day, you're giving away a portion of your company for the cheapest it's ever going to be. So you need to really think about whether or not that is the best tool for you, or whether or not there's other options.
I'm going to go through this super quickly and then the next few slides, and then I have to go, sadly, but Margaret Anne will stay to answer any questions.
Oh, yeah.
So in terms of kind of options for finance, so it's obviously all well and good us talking to you about like the various different options, but the thing that you want to know is like, how do I find them, or what do I, like, how do I reach out to them? So honestly, a ton of the founders that we work with find their angels on LinkedIn. And you can search angel on LinkedIn, and some angel investors will have that as a tag, but they're not normally the good ones. They're the ones that like think that it's cool to be an angel investor. Actually, a lot of the people that have money will not put that they're an angel on LinkedIn because they don't want to be harassed by startups left, right, and centre. But what you need to do is figure out who are the people in your industry who have money and might be able to support you. So if you're a fintech startup, for example, and you approach someone who works at a bank in the innovation department, they're probably on a pretty good salary, they'll probably understand innovation. You just ask them for a bit of advice, a bit of support, can you just help me nail my pitch who I'm going to get into? You get them on board as an advisor, and then they're bought into you. They want to have skin in the game. That's when they're going to invest in you. So it's definitely worth surrounding yourself with those advisors because they might turn into angel investors. And we know a lot of people that have gone down that route. We mentioned the LinkedIn invite before. Just remember that when you add someone on LinkedIn, you can add an optional message. You've got 300 characters. That's your pitch. So make those 300 letters count. There's other tools that you can check out: AngelList, Angel Investment Network, Crunchbase. You can search through all of the angels there. They will tell you what industry they're investing in, the check sizes that they invest in, some of their portfolio companies. You can actually find loads of information, and I searched on Crunchbase just for Birmingham, and there was like 6 that came up in the region of angel investors that are based in Birmingham. But like you say, you don't need an angel investor that's based in Birmingham to understand, your product, your business, your route to market. So just go get those angels. Minerva Business Angels seems to be a network. I believe it was started at University of Warwick, but they've got their network is supported by Aston and University of Birmingham. So they've got angels that you can speak to that do understand regional stuff. And the University of Birmingham also has a list of fundraising support for startups, and we put a link on here. Another resource which is super useful is this open source sheet from Techstars, and they've listed over 600 VCs and angel investors that are actively investing in Europe. There is over 100 of them that are actively investing in the UK. I'm copying and pasting the link to that document here. It's a great start to just look through 100 VCs and angels, figure out what areas they're investing in, figure out which one's right for you. Customers, cool, 3 minutes. Right, so in terms of customers, we just wanted to let you know that we talk to people a lot about customers. You don't have to get investment. There is definitely no need to get investment to be a successful company at all. You might just want to grow organically, you might want to get customers and scale that way. So there's a few different types of customers. SMEs, if they're your customers, it's actually really easy to find them as a tech startup because they are people like you. If your customer is another technology business or is a small to medium-sized company, you're going to find them in co-working spaces, firstly. If you've got a community of 150 small businesses working from a space, sign up to it. You're literally networking and learning alongside your customer 24/7. It's like free marketing for the price of an office. All of the events, all of the community groups, Slack channels, Facebook groups, everything we've just mentioned in terms of finding like-minded people. If those people are also your customers, then you should be hitting them up for feedback, to chat to them about what's going on. Actually, we had a lot of small businesses in a community that we used to work for who all supported each other. They'd much rather buy products from other tech startups than one of the big corporate players. So really use that network. Public sector, slightly more difficult. So if you're going to try and get into the NHS, central government, something like that, ideally you have an in within the organisation. And again, like we're saying with all of these things, you go in and ask them for feedback first. The thing that they normally want to see is data. So if you give them some data to play around with or something like that, that's the hook. And if there is a private sector equivalent, so you know, if it's NHS and you go to a private hospital and you can get results that way, validate with the private sector, then go into the public sector. It's very similar to corporates, which have very, very, very long lead times. So if corporates are your customers, you just need to remember, it's the last point, but I'll say it first, everything goes so slowly. So what you want to do is look out for corporates who already engages with startups in some way. So they might be running accelerator programs, they might be visible at events, they might have their own VC arm, but there's something that indicates that they work with startups already. They're probably kind of your low-hanging fruit. They will have scouting teams, like we used to do events all the time, KPMG, EY, PwC. They were every single event because they're interested in working with startups. So identify who the low-hanging fruit are just by looking around the ecosystem and which corporate names are coming up. If you don't want to go down that route or you don't find one of the low-hanging fruit, there's specific corporate companies. Again, use LinkedIn. If you want to find the right person, find them and ask them for advice. If you're not sure who the right person is, head of innovation or head of CSR is probably a good place to start. CSR in particular tends to be the low-hanging fruit budget-wise because they're given a budget in advance at the beginning of the year and told that they need to spend it on CSR initiatives. So if you've got a social business or you can align with what they want to achieve from their CSR budget, much easier way to get money. Couple of tips for this: make sure you engage with more than one person. The last thing you want is to spend a year building a relationship and that person leaves. So
and that does happen. We've seen that happen.
That happens, yeah. So make sure that they introduce you to other people. You've got buy-in from different parts of the organisation. And with the CSR stuff, look at their reports. What have they spent money on within the past year? They might say that they've got all of these agendas, but what are they actually spending money on? And then pitch that. Another thing is that make sure that they pay you. If you're running a pilot for a corporate, make them pay you, because we speak to a bunch of corporates all the time and they're like, oh, if we're not paying for a pilot, we're not really serious. Like, if they're paying £2,000 to £3,000, that's not anything for them, that's no money for them, but they know that they're investing in you and your time to be able to work on this pilot with them. It might be more than that, you might need more money down the line, but get a little bit of money because that money is them showing commitment. Yeah. And yeah, just really, really, really remember the lead time. One of our corporate friends told us literally the other day, every tick of the clock is a month in a corporate. You won't get an email back for a month. They won't have had, you know, a meeting where they pitch your idea to their stakeholders for a month. So time just flies past. And this guy said to us, we have literally killed startups that are corporate because we just haven't got the money in time, and then they've just died in the meantime, because it would have taken us 2 years. So you need to allow for that with cash flow. Make sure you've got other customers as well, or if you've got investment, that's going to see you through how long it's actually going to take for you to get your corporates on board. I have to go. Are you okay to do the rest of it?
Hi, Kevin. Okay, so the last little portion that we'll touch on before we move to Q&A, diversity and inclusion networks. Right now, I think it's the best time ever to be a typically underrepresented founder or underestimated founder. I love that term. Shout out Arlen Hamilton from Backstage Capital. So a few different networks you can use. ALDER's list, it's kind of like an email network for women or anyone who identifies as a woman in the technology sector. It's fantastic. Everybody kind of posts like asks on it, or yeah, just different questions if they're hiring. If they want like an extra like on a LinkedIn post that they're doing about a product launch, you can just sign up for that on the website. Lean In Circle, posted by Sheryl Sandberg. Maybe I'm a little more iffy on her now because of Facebook, but the initiative's great, and Lean In Circle has a lot of fantastic like, local resources. Hi, Perdie. She's my favorite. She's also my co-founder, so I'm biased, but she's just fantastic. Third point, UK Black Tech. It's a really great, innovative kind of group network within the UK. They put on a lot of fantastic events. They have job boards, a lot of great content. YS, I think it started about a year and a half ago by a really fantastic woman named Deborah. Join it, they do fantastic programming. and then people of color in tech as well. All of these different links, yeah, everything that's blue in here is a link. So when we post the slide deck afterwards, you can just click on everything and get it super easily. Last little point is that, you know, don't feel like, I'll just give my own example. I don't want to ever feel like just because I'm the only female at a networking event, which that has happened loads of times, that I don't belong. Just because you're the only X person there, it doesn't mean that your voice doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be there in the first place. It doesn't mean that you can't go and take advantage of everything at the event. So yeah, just never, don't feel nervous. Don't feel nervous at these things. At the end of the day, everybody feels just as uncomfortable as you, and so it's totally fine whenever you get a little nervous or uncomfortable. Okay, I think we have 2 other slides. Hiring, so now that you've fundraised, you probably want to hire too, and so how are you going to grow your team? Well, this is why it's really fantastic to be at like a co-working space or community groups, some of them that we've mentioned in the past. We have a lot of friends in the ecosystem or founders that we know who have hired based off of people that they've met at like a random meetup and they became friends with, and then, you know, 6 months later after they had more money in their startup bank, they went and hired. So these are really great networks to get into. And whether or not you meet someone who you're going to hire specifically, you might meet someone who knows someone who they can recommend. Also, skill-specific schools, fantastic. There's a lot of great like coding schools, so you can talk to them if you're hiring. Or they also do like role-specific training as well. For instance, like there's a lot of product management schools out there, and so if you're looking to hire, you can contact them. They do a lot of hiring for the students, so that's a good opportunity. Also, department heads at universities are great if you need to hire like a specific tool or a specific kind of, I guess, sector niche. You can contact like AI, I don't know, native language processing or something like that, that you need to start up. The head of department at like the master's program at Imperial College will have students that they can recommend. Also, angel list jobs is really fantastic. Probably everybody's familiar with that. If you go on there, you can also see the salaries that they pay, the salaries that all the different job listings similar to yours will have. So that's really great for budgeting and forecasting. We have other resources in here, but I'll just let you dive into those things afterwards as you're interested. Okay, other support to consider. We're so close on time. Basically, there's a lot of government support available for you, both at the central level, like Innovate UK grants, and local. Shout out Kodak. My very good friend Dom is the executive director there. He represents all of different startups' voices to the government and really helps workshop ideas and how the government can support and help. He is definitely somewhere. Kodak's work is definitely something worth paying attention to, because the government really listens to them and helps listens to their voice when shaping different initiatives to connect with startups and support startups. Local government, your government will have a pool of money dedicated to supporting startups, and sometimes they don't always know the best way to spend that money. So if you can present really exciting opportunities for that, there's definitely money pools available for them. Incubators, accelerators, we have lists here as well for people in Birmingham. Again, you can look at them afterwards. I'm trying to get through all the slides, but there's a lot of great resources out there. Okay, and then we created a school map for you to do on your own as well if you want to kind of break down all the different steps. We're going to post it on a Slack channel, but I will stop talking in case there are any questions.
Well, I'd just like to say that was pretty incredible, Margaret. Like a true deep dive into like getting started in the tech ecosystem. And something I certainly would have wanted to know 6 months ago when I was trying to network around Birmingham, because it would have saved me a lot of time and effort. If you are on the call, so we've opened the Q&A section.
Yeah,
so on the bottom of your Zoom link, if you have any questions for Margaret or any questions about the presentation, if you type them in the Q&A section, and then we can read out a few and have them answered. So that's open now if anyone has any. Give them a moment.
I see how do mentors and business specialists meet tech startups across Birmingham, and I see that Jay answered. Are there any unanswered questions I should touch on?
Not at the moment. Does anyone on the call have any? Or Yanis, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
No questions specifically. There's just so much covered. Kind of to echo your point, Jay, I know you and I have talked about this a lot. You know, we had this information, you know, myself a couple of years ago and you 6 months ago. I think it would be extremely valuable, because we've kind of had to connect the dots up ourselves and kind of find information as we've gone along. I know Alan Blunt, who's been on a few calls as well, he's had the same experience. So yeah, I think kind of if we can kind of share this information, and just a big thank you, Margaret and Perdie. I know she's not with us, but if you can pass on our thanks as well. You know, tons of great stuff. I think there are a few questions now dropping in the chat. So Joe, I'm going to hand back to you so you can kind of answer a few of those.
Yeah, so I'll read some out. So just to answer, a few people have asked about the slides in the webinar. So we're recording the webinar as part of Birmingham Tech, so that will be available. And then Margaret, would we be able to get a copy for the...
We'll send you over the slides, no problem.
Brilliant. There you go, everyone. Here's one. How does London compare to Birmingham, in your opinion? So I'd probably context that because I've worked in the London ecosystem, and so London's obviously a global tech capital where Birmingham's up and coming. I think I'd rephrase the question to say, so what do you think the differences are and the advantages or pros and cons of working in like a global tech hub and a secondary like up and coming tech hub?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, similar to what you're saying. Sorry, you just cut out right at the end there. So I don't want to repeat you, and if I did, it's not because I wasn't listening, you just cut out. Yeah, you know, London obviously is larger, you have a lot of access to talent, but the other side of that is that the job market is super competitive. So if you've just closed a funding round and you're going to hire, you're going to have to pay higher salaries, and there's going to be a lot of other startups at your stage, possibly even doing exactly what you're doing that you need to compete with. So that's why you're doing things like trying to build up your brand or build up you know, your company mission, and you want to have a mission that people can buy into. That's something that can kind of help people stand out from the job market perspective. But yeah, I personally, had you asked me this like 7 months before, I would say just being in a big tech environment like London is so advantageous. But right now, I mean, who cares? We're speaking of Birmingham Tech Week virtually, and we're really excited to do that. And it's just you have to take advantage of wherever you are. And as I was saying earlier, you have the advantage of it being cheaper, and so sell the hell out of that to VCs.
Yeah, I can give a bit more context on that because I worked in London for sort of 5 years. I've also worked in Leeds and Manchester, although most of the time I work from Birmingham, which is quite ironic. But London's great if you want to go fast and you want to go big. So you're in a very fast-moving environment, extremely competitive. It's really fun. I was there when I was in my late 20s, so I love that sort of lifestyle. One of the disadvantages, and I experienced it myself working in startups there, was if you have a good idea and you get traction, then overnight you can expect maybe 4 or 5 competitors to sort of appear within a month doing exactly the same as what you're doing. They can raise very fast, very easily. So you don't really have that luxury of like building in stealth and going like slow and steady, which you do have in other environments. So it's sort of a bit of what you really want and what you like. From my experience, I've tried them all, and it's sort of different horses for different courses, I suppose. But yeah, in a lockdown world, the advantages of being in London have sort of disintegrated at the moment. So I think, yeah, just do what you can remotely and then crack on.
Yeah, just to build on that, Jay, I think you're spot on, because ultimately, you know, we are only an hour or so from London, right? I was involved in a startup quite recently, and you know, we couldn't get investment in the local area, so we jumped on a train, spoke to an investor, got a seed round sorted, but that investor thought it was great that we were in Birmingham, because obviously the cost of acquiring new talent, the cost of operating, it's all lower. So we should play on that a lot more than we do, but also not kind of, you know, I hear a lot about, oh, there's not enough investors in Birmingham. Well, go to Manchester, go to Bristol, go to kind of London, you know, that will change over time, but you know, that investment is available if you've got a good solution that delivers real value. So yeah, I think kind of let's kind of connect all the dots up across the regions, really.
Yeah. So we've got a question that's come in. Sorry, Margaret, do you want to say?
I was just going to say one other note on that is I would make it like on a sheet, shove that down their throat that it's so much cheaper where you're at. Like show them actual price comparisons and be like, oh, if I was in London, I would have to pay 2x for this salary, and if I'm hiring 10 of these people, that's this much more money. Like make that super crystal clear and very tangible.
Yeah, we've got questions coming from Francis. So are these investors you mentioned interested in pre-revenue? So this is always the classic balance, right?
Yeah. Certainly there are people on the list, especially the Tech Nation list that we posted, or Techstars list, I think it's Tech Nation list, that do pre-revenue. A few tips on pre-revenue. Number one, build those relationships early. Obviously, if you're doing pre-revenue, it's probably early in your company stage anyway, so maybe it's difficult to build those relationships 12 months in advance, but still, just start as soon as possible, because they're going to need to really buy into you. Early stage funding in general is always the VC buying into you, not necessarily your company, especially for pre-revenue. But that's also where you have to get a little crafty, because unless you're doing something that is super research heavy, where you're going to be spending the next 2 to 3 years in R&D, where yes, you just do have to have that pre-revenue investment, you have to figure out a way to get money from your customer or some sort of proof. Like, you just have to do that in order to prove it, which is of course difficult, but as a founder, you're going to have to do difficult things every day, unfortunately.
So building on that, have you found any tips or tricks to be able to identify investors who are up for investing pre-revenue, or is that just sort of a numbers game?
Yeah, Angel List is fantastic. And then I would also say what Perdie was saying earlier is that look up people on LinkedIn who hold positions in industries that you're interested in, because they have the money and they have the expertise. Like, if you're doing something that is super, it's a massive problem, but maybe not a lot of people realize that it's a massive problem, go to the people who feel the pain of your problem, because they'll be a lot happier to write a check. And you can find loads on LinkedIn. I mean, I don't think that would be an issue, but it is time consuming, and it can be a little soul sucking sending 100 emails and getting like 2 responses, but part of the fun.
Yeah, I don't know if it still exists, but there was Dexender, which Doug, a local kind of entrepreneur and investor, created, which basically syndicated your pitch deck to a number of investors. Worth checking that out, because then it saves you having to do those 100 soul destroying messages and getting 2 responses. It's a mix of everything, right? Isn't it, Margaret?
Yeah, absolutely. One other note, actually, number one, if you're located in the north, there's a company called North Invest. They're non-for-profit. I believe they're not-for-profit, but they don't charge startups any money, and they'll help you a lot with an early stage investment. Number 2, be very wary of any sort of angel networks that charge you money to pitch or circulate your deck. As a startup, companies should not be trying to monetize you pitching investors. That's just a major red flag.
Yeah, it's really good advice, Margaret. I'd echo that from my own experience. Avoid those guys. So we're pretty much at time, so I'm going to close it off there, unless there's any other final questions or remarks. But what I'd like to say from the Birmingham tech team and everyone in Birmingham is it's been fantastic having you on. And that was super, super in depth, and I'm sure everyone enjoyed it as much as we did. So thank you very much.
We had so much information to pile through, so I hope nobody felt overwhelmed. But we'll send out the deck, and please, my email is margaret@spystartups.com. Perdie's is perdie@spystartups.com. Drop us a message. We are more than happy to chat and answer anything we can.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for your time, and thank you everyone for tuning in. And we hope to see you tomorrow as well.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you. My pleasure. Bye.
Bye.